Hi everyone, Ni hao, bonjour to the portal of www. So this is in continuation to the spectrum analysis and particularly understand code to be or what can be deployed and how it can enhance the signaling for different aspects. So I'll go through some of the codes. I'll walk you through some of the data sets which we have gathered. And if you have any questions, put your questions in the chat box and we'll look into it. I'll put myself on mute right now. I have retrieved the data set which I wish to discuss, and there's a lot happening in the quantum world. Yeah, so let's deep dive into that in a while. I'm putting myself on mute. Okay, so let's first understand the mission focus of this new space, the paradigm shift, which is for real in the new world order, the equations which can be equated with the ITU protocol, that is International Telecommunication Union, and the associated protocols, along with the timeline of the discussion. So I'll walk you through that data. So the mission focus of particularly new space Earth observing paradigms is to understand the altimetry, chemistry, and the other parameters at a bigger scale, which is very important. And the unit cost for the same, that is going in trillions right now, with the prior technologies which were developed to look into this data set. However, now we can utilize the different constellations of the satellites and get the data set in a fast, speedy manner. So Uh, okay, a few missions. Da, da, da. So currently, it has been observed that there is a large observation gap in terms of the data being taken on a real time for the evaluation process of any of these small language modules, which are proprietary in nature. So if we just talk about the EOS spacecraft, which is NASA's project, and it includes Terra, Aqua, Aura, it has surpassed 3 billion USDT as far as the research activities or the kind of fiat currency which was involved just to solve that problem statement. And the nature of the prior art is very evident from the fact that uh, Earth observing missions are now flying. Then the list of Earth missions planned on proposed NASA and for the next 15 years, and the remote sensing mission and the measurement concepts are still in the conceptual stage. The need of the hour is to get it done in a fast, speedy manner. And how we can. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through the global navigation satellite system and its module and the submodule, which is being utilized or which is being proposed for solving this massive issue, is to have the first crosslink antenna that is pointing towards or in one first direction. So first direction itself can be the direction. Again, I in my personal capacity, I believe should be dynamic, depending on the parameters which are observed by the sensors. Multiple sensors need to be deployed, which is taking into account different parameters, and depending on the parameters and taking the variance of the same would be a better solution to solve the given problem at hand. Okay, let's. Um, I'm trying to simplify for the folks who wish to code the smart contracts around it. And this can be utilized for a lot of activities, including anywhere there is carriage, anywhere there's vehicle, anywhere there is ship, anywhere there is any kind of movement from point, whatever the point is, to another destination, through any of the available means, whether it's wind, whether it's water, whether it's land, whether it's sea, it can be deployed everywhere. So let's deep dive into this. Okay, so how to enable the modules and the submodules for the Earth observation for the measurements? It is very important first to identify the core control parameters, and depending upon the problem to be solved, the number of parameters can be in the control group. So there's a difference between a control module and a monitoring module. Control module is given parameters have to be controlled, there has to be a threshold. If the threshold is being crossed, that has to be reported in real time, and this application itself can be utilized for the search application. um, Now when we are trying to understand this, say for example in one of the events, the antenna is able to reject multiple echoes, or perhaps we can have multi-path satellites in the same line of sight. um, I would say I did one very detailed application, almost, I think it is 2009 2010 application, um, which is discussing the similar I would say it's on the road itself, because there's something called as blind spot, and that blind spot kind of understanding can be deployed in multiple events. And when we're trying to understand and rejecting the multiple echoes, because echoes, okay, I like this new. Okay, I think. What's your pet? What's your pet named you? No, I would rather refute to answer this question. If anybody wants to answer this question, they can answer today or whenever they review this. Okay, we were talking about here. Pet again can be a lot of things. Pet is an animal. Pet is a chemical term. So it's a phrase which can be utilized in many multi-facet way. Okay, so we are talking about the intersat links, and for the intersat links itself, we can have a CDMA style multiple access modules and submodules to resolve the issue at hand. Next, we have same CDMA can benefit even if the RX is simpler. So now what we need to understand is how the crosslink works in a tomographic way. For the tomography to work in a proper way, there has to be some kind of um, instrument, equipment, a handheld device, maybe a tomographic water vapor sounder to resolve this issue at hand. Then we have, so for the constellation maintenance, there has to be measurement of the gravity and the mass change. Um, the beauty of the discussion here is there are events where you can take the hypothesis whereby the capital T and the small t both are zero. So when you do the calculations with that a hypothesis in mind, the result itself will speak for itself. So look into that, and perhaps you will enjoy that calculation at your end. Um, that being said, baseline ensures. Okay. This is done. Let me see if I want to discuss something else into this.
Why don't I add a couple of items on that?
Okay, this is done. I'll move on to the next application. Okay, this is a very old application. I mean, the priority itself is 2006, and irrespective the fee structure is filed or not, as far as the annuity is concerned, so 2026 it's over. Perhaps let me just dive into this. I'll dive into the classification first because I have a fascination for the classification, because that actually talks to me, because whenever I was doing the knockout research, just once I was not able to knock out a particular tech, except that all the tech in my life I have knocked it out beautifully. Thankfully, the point here is I don't do that very often. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for the folks to even get a patent at the first place, whether it's in domestic country or internationally in any of the countries. Okay, further workflow analysis. So workflow analysis, particularly something which is proprietary in nature, and how you are able to have the flow charts and the flow diagrams in place. And with that, you have the modules and the submodules in place, and that makes up the bigger system where there is communication protocol to transfer the data in real time. And perhaps in many of the cases, it can be futuristic part also. You can look into the algo which has been developed by me, so you can always understand that, deploy that, and see the magic happens for you. That's how it works. um, so the workflow analysis, we have G06Q10/0633. Then for the admin and the management, we have G06Q10/00. At the enterprise level or at the organization modeling, we have G06Q10/067. For the requirement analysis and for the techniques, I think we already discussed this. That is G06F8/10. Strategy for the effectiveness of the goals in terms of the SWOT analysis. I would recommend to look into G06Q10/0637. So that is the management strategy analysis, setting a goal or target of an organization, planning action based on the goals, analysis and evaluation and effectiveness of goals. That's very important. Okay, what are we trying to do? It's a very old. I'm not very sure whether it will have any significance in 2025 and beyond. Okay, let's go through it. It is determining modeling objectives based on receiving a modeling objective information from the enterprise. Okay, perhaps from the enterprise itself, you have different parameters as to the short-term goals and the long-term goals. Short-term goals, I always feel, should be not the days, but the working hours the candidates are putting into, and that should be evaluated, not the days, because uh, the waking up time of a candidate on a daily basis, candidates are not online at all times, even if they're logged in. What is important is to execute and understand what is the hourly quotation of that particular candidate. That becomes very important for the evaluation of the enterprise itself at the first place. Then we have identifying multiple processes, having boundaries based on receiving a plurality of process boundary information from the enterprise. Okay, boundary is kind of a perimeter stuff. Then constructing a first analysis model based on at least legacy business process model. Interesting. I think I'll deep dive into this. We have this legacy business process model. Then we have the analysis with business process reference model. I'll go into the legacy. What are they talking about legacy? Nothing much here. Okay. Grouping a task at an initial WB model into polarity of process components, component perform. So it's like dividing it into the initial WB model and adjusting at least one of the polarity of control flow and multiple process components of the initial WB model. Okay, what are they referring WB here? Okay, so we have this notation. Legacy business process model is event driven process chain. So legacy includes event driven process chain. And then we have WB here is web sphere business, and notation WB da da da. We are debugging it. I mean, for the longest time, I think I have been discussing this, that for any of these MBAs, the basis always is to understand the SWOT. SWOT is strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats. How the threat itself can be a task which is given to a candidate so that it becomes an opportunity at any given point of time. That is the question, or I rather say it's a burning question right now in the good chaos the new world order is in. So we have this. They're trying to make a very simple thing difficult, which is not the case when you are trying to do it. Okay, let's understand this. Okay, this definitely has an end, but it has infinite loop also when there's a yes or no. So let's just, I'll just discuss this and I will sum it up. We are selecting current component from a set of initial components. Then we are trying to understand whether the current component is available or not. So you need to define what the component is at the first place. If it is a yes, remove current component from the set of initial component. If it is a no, create a sub process for each component in the set of final components. So it's basically piecing and slicing of the task at hand, so that whatever the output which has to be achieved, the input itself is bifurcated to a timeline whereby it is executed in the fast speedy manner. And then of course, if it is creating a sub process, create start and an end node for each component, and then the process ends. Let's go back to the cycle where we are removing the current component from the set of initial component, then determining adjacent component for current component. And then there's another determination to understand whether the adjacent component are available. If the adjacent components are not available, what you need to do is define and understand the current component can be extended by any adjacent component. Fantastic. If it is a yes, we will go to current component is placed back into a set of initial component, and all merged adjacent component are deleted from set of initial components. Fantastic. Then where are we going? And once this is executed, this will go back to selecting the current component from the set of initial components. So this is how a loop is created. I mean, folks don't understand what is a loop when we're talking about flowcharts and the flow diagrams. This is a very good live example of something where we start with the initial component, where we have to select the current component from a set of initial components, and we are getting back to understanding that current components placed back to the set of initial component, and all are merged to the adjacent component, and that is deleted from the set of initial components. Okay. In many ways, it makes no sense altogether, but if it makes sense, you can definitely execute this. So at the first instance of, if I'm going back to this step number, whatever the step number is, I'm not getting to the number game right now. So if the current component is available, so in the first instance, or rather, I would rather say it is the first event where the current component was not available. What if it is available? If it is available, you are removing current component from set of initial component. Done. Then again, there's a determination to determine adjacent component from the current component. If that is there, we have a determination whether we are trying to state that adjacent components are available. Adjacent components are not available in this scenario. If it is not available, then select next adjacent component and remove from adjacent component. Wow. Then we have another determination which is trying to determine extend current component with adjacent component. If it is a yes, extend current component from adjacent component. And if this happens, it goes back to the determination step again, which talks about adjacent components available or not. Wow.
So I can include that
I think that is one reason, such applications are part of the pool where you are said that you can utilize this application, which is free for anyone to be deployed for any of their use case studies. Yeah, so this is done. Okay, I wanted to give it a synopsis, but I want to do another one. Let's see if I'm able to pick up something interesting. Okay, what if let me see what has been done. Okay, the good thing about the current understanding here is that most of the research in the last couple of years has been conducted in China, and this is really a good one on a good note, which is early warning and forecasting method and system for landside disturbance river runoff. So why do they don't have the IPCs here? But what are they doing? Lack of data. Okay. Landslide. Okay, but this is not applicable for, okay, a lot of applications. So just to give a synopsis. A lot of applications are developed keeping in view the environmental factors of that particular region, and that might not be the case when it is being deployed in other regions. So you need to have your own protocols. Hmm. Okay. Should I go with this? So if you just understand the research work which has been conducted in geophysics and detection of objects, um, there was a dip in this work in 1980s and 1990s, but now again it has, after the lockdown, it took there's an upward movement of the same, and human presence detection on a mobile machine. Okay, let's see this one. I want to do the classification. That's one reason I want to discuss this one, and then I'll just end. So, for the automatic action to avoid any kind of collusion, particularly I think from the safety aspect, it is B60W30/09. And then we have for the predicting travel path or likelihood of collusion, um, to the response of traffic or environmental parameters, it is B60W30/0956. And then we have agriculture vehicles, which is B60Y2200/22. Um, Input parameters relating to objects, it is B60W2554/00. Optical camera, we already discussed, B60W2420/403. Okay, let's see what are they doing. I'll just pick up one of their flowcharts. Okay, so for this signal detection, what is important is the deployment of sensors. So here we have optical sensors, thermal sensors, additional sensors. Once the data is taken, then it's performing the sensor signal processing, which is conditioning, image processing, and the others in this particular case. And then we have receiving. Okay, there is a weight formula which is deployed for the sensor data, which is taken from environmental sensor, external information system, position sensors, and the others. Identifier contribution, example, weight of each human presence sensor to a human presence indicator matrix. Okay, gen weight. So I think I did discuss about the energy harvesting um, from the human capacity building viewpoint. So that is something one can look into.
Michael, I have just one suggestion.
Now the determination is, should an action signal be generated based on the human presence matrix? If it is a yes, generate an action signal and continue the monitoring process the way I talked about. And particularly when we're talking about generating an action signal, that is surface for user, emergency stop, change course, control from other control systems.
Get that started, and the cash flow point, we can include that on the policy. So Michael, I have prepared policies, financial finance policies for many of the companies when I was at the consulting role. We can start with the Philippines as you suggested, and then we can go to
Even for
again
the haptic output, you can look into the research work I did a couple of years back. If you just put it on any of the modules and search with my name, you will get the details. So this is the basic synopsis of what I wanted to discuss. So if I just have to talk about in next couple of minutes, it would be, there's a difference between control, there's difference between monitoring, there's difference between execution. So if we consider these three parameters as Trinity to be deployed as a hypothesis for the probabilities and the possibilities, you will get a lot of good case studies. Build on that and see how it is able to change the speed of execution of the data, particularly deployed for child safety, then deploy it for the cyber attacks, and then of course it has a lot of use case studies in that way. Thank you for watching this out. Have a great week ahead. Yes, you can definitely send a DM and we'll look into it. Have a great day. Bye bye.